the wrath of Zeus. In Greek mythology, Zeus is not merely the god of thunder. He is the supreme judge of gods and mortals, the final authority who decides who is worthy of mercy and who must endure a fate worse than death itself. From the heights of Mount Olympus, Zeus watches humanity in silence. But when his patience runs out, the sky darkens, the winds howl, and thunder becomes a sentence of judgment. His punishments are not quick. They are not merciful. They are carefully designed to break the body, shatter the mind, and erase hope from the soul. Some were chained to mountains and torn apart again and again. Some were cursed with endless hunger, endless labor, or eternal humiliation. And some punishments were so severe that entire civilizations were erased, drowned beneath divine wrath. To Zeus, death is often too kind. True punishment lies in eternity, in suffering that never ends, lessons carved into flesh and memory. Each lightning bolt is more than raw power. It is a warning to all who dare challenge divine order. In this story, we uncover the 10 most brutal punishments ever inflicted by Zeus, sentences that made gods tremble, mortals beg for oblivion, and the world itself learn to fear the sound of thunder. Part 1. Physical punishments, pain without end. Before Zeus sought to break the minds of mortals, before he erased entire civilizations with floods and divine plagues, his earliest punishments were brutally simple. They were punishments of the flesh. In the eyes of Zeus, the human body was not sacred. It was a vessel, one that could be shattered, rebuilt, and shattered again if necessary. Pain was not merely suffering. It was a language, a message written into muscle, bone, and blood. And eternity was the ink. These physical punishments were never random acts of rage. They were carefully designed sentences, tailored to the crime, the defiance, and the arrogance of those who dared challenge the king of Olympus. Zeus did not simply kill his enemies. Death was too brief, too merciful. Instead, he chose punishments that would outlast generations, punishments that would echo through myth, whispered by mortals every time thunder rolled across the sky. 1. Prometheus, the eternal devouring. Prometheus was a titan, older than Zeus himself, and unlike many of his kind, he possessed something dangerous: sympathy for humanity. When Zeus denied fire to mortals, condemning them to darkness, cold, and helplessness, Prometheus defied divine law. He stole fire from Olympus and delivered it to humankind, gifting them warmth, knowledge, and the first spark of civilization. To Zeus, this was not just theft. It was rebellion. Prometheus was chained to the desolate cliffs of the Caucasus Mountains, high above the world he had tried to save. There, Zeus sent an eagle, an extension of his own will, to feast upon Prometheus' liver every single day. By nightfall, the organ regenerated, only for the torment to begin again at dawn. This punishment was deliberate in its cruelty. The liver, believed by the ancient Greeks to be the seat of emotion and vitality, ensured that Prometheus remained fully conscious of his suffering. He could feel every tear of flesh, every stab of pain. Some myths whisper that when storms gather over the mountains, Prometheus' screams merge with the thunder itself, as if Zeus forces the world to hear the consequences of defiance. Prometheus did not beg. He did not repent. And perhaps that was Zeus' greatest frustration. A punishment designed to break the body failed to conquer the spirit. 2. Atlas, strength turned into a curse. Atlas was a titan of immense power, a general in the war against the Olympian gods. When Zeus emerged victorious, he reserved a special punishment for Atlas, one that weaponized his greatest strength against him. Rather than chaining Atlas or tearing him apart, Zeus commanded him to hold up the sky itself. Not the earth, as later myths confused, but the celestial heavens, the weight of eternity pressing down upon his shoulders. Atlas was not allowed to kneel. He was not allowed to rest. He was not allowed to die. Every second became an act of endurance. This punishment was a masterstroke of psychological cruelty wrapped in physical agony. Atlas' legendary strength, once a symbol of pride, became the very reason his suffering could never end. Zeus ensured that Atlas was strong enough to endure, but never strong enough to escape. Ancient sailors believed that earthquakes were caused by Atlas shifting his stance, his muscles trembling under the unbearable load, while Zeus watched silently from Olympus. Atlas' punishment teaches a chilling lesson. In Zeus' justice, even virtues can become chains. 3. Ixion, the wheel of eternal motion. Ixion was a mortal king granted an honor no human should have received, an invitation to Mount Olympus. Zeus welcomed him, fed him, and gave him a seat among the gods. Ixion repaid this mercy with desire. Consumed by lust, he attempted to seduce Hera, the queen of the gods and Zeus' wife. Some myths claim Zeus tested Ixion by shaping a cloud in Hera's likeness. Ixion failed the test. Zeus' response was swift and merciless. Ixion was bound to a massive, flaming wheel and cast into the heavens, condemned to spin endlessly through the sky. The fire burned his flesh, the rotation shattered his sense of direction, and the endless motion erased any hope of rest. This punishment attacked the body in multiple dimensions: heat, motion, disorientation, and exhaustion. There was no stable ground, no stillness, no relief. Certain storytellers claimed that shooting stars were fragments of Ixion's burning wheel, torn away as it tore through the heavens, a reminder that divine hospitality should never be betrayed. Ixion's punishment stands as Zeus' warning to mortals who mistake divine mercy for weakness. 4. Tityos, desecration of the body. Tityos was a giant, the son of Gaia herself. His crime was an act of violence against the divine, an attempted assault on Leto, mother of Apollo and Artemis. Unlike Prometheus, Tityos was granted no symbolic grandeur. His punishment was raw, humiliating, and deeply physical. Zeus cast him into Tartarus, where he was stretched across the ground, his massive body pinned helplessly in place. 2 vultures, or in some versions, serpents, were sent to devour his liver repeatedly, mirroring Prometheus' fate, but stripped of any heroic framing. There was no lesson for humanity here, no higher cause, only degradation. Some myths claim that Tityos' screams never reached Olympus, not because Zeus could not hear them, but because he chose not to. This distinction matters. Zeus was capable of mercy. His refusal to grant it was itself part of the punishment. The philosophy behind physical punishment. These punishments reveal something essential about Zeus' rule. He did not rely on chaos or random violence. His cruelty was structured. Each punishment was designed to reflect the crime, to send a message not only to the victim but to all who would hear the tale. Pain became propaganda. By chaining Prometheus, Zeus warned against rebellion. By burdening Atlas, he warned against challenging divine order. By torturing Ixion, he warned against arrogance. By degrading Tityos, he warned against sacrilege. And perhaps most terrifying of all, Zeus ensured that these punishments were remembered. Stories were passed down, embellished, retold, until pain itself became immortal. In the world of Greek mythology, the body is not merely flesh. It is a canvas upon which the gods write their laws. And under Zeus' rule, those laws were written in blood, fire, and unending agony. Part 2. Psychological punishments. Pain worse than death. If physical punishment was Zeus' hammer, then psychological punishment was his scalpel. Where flesh could eventually grow numb to pain, the mind could not. Zeus understood this truth with terrifying clarity. To him, the greatest suffering was not found in torn skin or broken bones, but in hope that never dies and peace that never comes. Death offers release. Madness offers escape. But Zeus designed punishments that denied both. In these sentences, the body often survived intact. It was the spirit that was condemned to collapse slowly, endlessly, and consciously. Victims were forced to confront their own desires, regrets, and failures again and again, until time itself became an enemy. These were punishments crafted not to end a life, but to erase meaning from existence. 5. Sisyphus, the eternal futility. Sisyphus was no ordinary mortal. He was clever, charismatic, and dangerously intelligent. A king who believed he could outthink the gods themselves. He betrayed Zeus' secrets. He chained Thanatos, the god of death. He cheated his way back from the underworld. Each time, Sisyphus believed he had won. Zeus allowed this, for a while. When judgment finally came, it was devastating in its simplicity. Sisyphus was condemned to roll a massive stone up a steep hill. Just as it reached the summit, the stone would slip from his grasp and tumble back down. He was then forced to descend and begin again. Forever. There was no physical torture in the traditional sense. No fire, no blades, no blood. Yet this punishment is considered one of the cruelest in all mythology. Why? Because it destroyed purpose. Sisyphus remembered everything. He knew the outcome of every attempt. He felt the stone's weight, the burn in his muscles, the brief flicker of hope as he neared the top, only to watch it collapse into nothing. Some tales whisper that Zeus occasionally allowed the stone to rest at the summit for a heartbeat longer than usual, just long enough for hope to bloom before crushing it again. This was Zeus' lesson. Intelligence without humility leads not to freedom, but to endless futility. 6. Tantalus, eternal desire, eternal denial. Tantalus was once favored by the gods. He dined at their tables, drank nectar, and listened to divine secrets. But pride corrupted him. In some myths, he stole ambrosia. In others, he revealed the gods' secrets to mortals. And in the darkest version, he murdered his own son and served him to the gods as a test. Zeus' punishment was exquisitely precise. Tantalus was placed in a pool of clear water beneath fruit-laden branches. Whenever he bent to drink, the water receded. Whenever he reached for fruit, the branches lifted beyond his grasp. Hunger and thirst tormented him endlessly, but never enough to kill him. This punishment attacked the mind through proximity. Relief was always visible, always close, always impossible. Some legends claim that Zeus designed the pool so Tantalus could see his own reflection, thin, desperate, and broken, forcing him to witness his own decay. The word tantalize was born from this myth, a linguistic scar left by divine cruelty. 7. Lycaon, the loss of humanity. Lycaon, king of Arcadia, sought to test Zeus himself. Doubting the god's divinity, he served Zeus a meal containing human flesh. The crime was not merely cannibalism. It was defiance, a challenge to divine authority. Zeus did not torture Lycaon's body. He destroyed his identity. Lycaon was transformed into a wolf. His speech vanished. His reason faded. His hands twisted into claws. Yet some fragment of his human consciousness remained, trapped within the mind of a beast. This was no escape. It was imprisonment. Ancient storytellers claimed that Lycaon retained flashes of memory, faces of his family, echoes of speech, only to lose them again as instinct overtook thought. This punishment forced Lycaon to experience life stripped of dignity, morality, and choice. A king reduced to hunger, fear, and violence. Zeus' message was clear. Those who abandon humanity will be forbidden from ever reclaiming it. The architecture of mental suffering. Zeus' psychological punishments share a chilling design philosophy. Awareness is preserved. Victims understand their punishment fully. Hope is manipulated, never removed, never fulfilled. Time is weaponized. Eternity amplifies despair. These punishments do not rely on pain receptors or physical endurance. They rely on memory, anticipation, and regret. Zeus did not merely punish actions, he punished intent. The role of hope in Zeus' cruelty. Perhaps the most unsettling element of Zeus' psychological punishments is that he rarely eliminates hope entirely. Why? Because hopelessness leads to numbness, and numbness dulls suffering. Instead, Zeus allows hope to survive, fragile, flickering, and false. Sisyphus hopes the stone will stay. Tantalus hopes the water will not recede. Lycaon hopes to remember who he once was. Each hope becomes a blade. Some philosophers believe Zeus understood the human mind better than humans themselves, that he knew despair without hope would end suffering, but despair with hope would last forever. Psychological punishment as divine control. Unlike physical punishments, which inspire fear, psychological punishments inspire obedience. They teach mortals not just to fear Zeus, but to internalize his authority. These myths were not merely stories. They were warnings encoded into culture. Do not challenge the gods. Do not overestimate intelligence. Do not mistake proximity to power for equality. Through these punishments, Zeus shaped not only behavior, but belief. The silence of Olympus. One detail appears again and again in these myths: silence. Zeus does not mock his victims. He does not justify himself. He does not explain. The punishment simply exists. Some legends claim that the most terrifying moment for the punished is not the suffering itself, but the realization that Zeus has stopped watching, leaving them alone with eternity. Silence. in Zeus' justice, is the final cruelty. Conclusion of Part 2. If Part 1 revealed Zeus' power over flesh, Part 2 exposes his mastery over the mind. These punishments prove that Zeus does not merely rule the heavens. He governs meaning, desire, and memory. He understands that a broken body may heal, but a broken spirit reshapes reality itself. In the mythology of ancient Greece, Zeus did not need to kill to assert dominance. He only needed to ensure that his victims never stopped living. Part 3. World-shattering punishments. When all of humanity paid the price. There comes a point where punishment is no longer directed at an individual. A moment when rage, judgment, and disappointment grow so vast that no single body, no single mind, can contain them. When Zeus reached that point, entire worlds suffered. Unlike physical or psychological punishments, crafted with precision, tailored to a single crime, these were acts of cosmic judgment. They were not meant to teach one soul a lesson. They were meant to reset existence itself. In these moments, Zeus was no longer merely the king of the gods. He became executioner of civilizations, architect of extinction, and final arbiter of whether humanity deserved to continue at all. These punishments were not sudden outbursts of divine anger. They were slow conclusions, reached after long observation, silent disappointment, and the belief that the world had strayed too far from divine order. And when Zeus judged humanity unworthy, the sky did not warn them. It simply fell. 8. The Great Flood, when Zeus chose erasure over correction. Humanity was never innocent in the eyes of Zeus. But there came an age when mortals crossed an invisible threshold, when arrogance, cruelty, and moral decay became the norm rather than the exception. Kings ruled through brutality. Oaths were meaningless. Hospitality, once sacred, was violated without shame. From Mount Olympus, Zeus watched, and he waited. In some myths, it was Lycaon's crime that sealed humanity's fate. In others, it was a long accumulation of sins, countless small transgressions that together formed a world beyond redemption. Zeus made his decision. The sky darkened. Rain began to fall, and it did not stop. Rivers overflowed. Seas swallowed coastlines. Cities vanished beneath rising waters. Humanity's greatest structures, temples, palaces, monuments to ego, collapsed like toys before the tide. This was not chaos. It was calculated annihilation. Zeus spared only two mortals, Deucalion and Pyrrha, the last remnants of a broken species. Guided by prophecy, they survived upon a small vessel, watching the world drown beneath them. Some ancient poets claimed Zeus did not look away during the flood, that he watched every wave rise, every scream fade beneath the water, committing the sound of extinction to memory. After the waters receded, Deucalion and Pyrrha were commanded to repopulate the world, not through birth alone, but by casting stones over their shoulders, which transformed into humans. Stone became flesh. Silence became life. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was rebuilt not from love, but from obedience. The Great Flood stands as Zeus' ultimate warning, proof that when correction fails, eradication follows. 9. Pandora's box, when suffering was released into the world. If the flood was Zeus' blunt instrument, Pandora was his masterpiece of subtle cruelty. After Prometheus gifted fire to humanity, Zeus sought a punishment that would not destroy humans outright, but would ensure they never knew peace again. He ordered the gods to create Pandora, the first woman, beautiful beyond measure and gifted with irresistible curiosity. To mortals, she appeared as a blessing. In truth, she was a weapon. Pandora was given a sealed container, often called a box, though originally a jar, and instructed never to open it. Zeus knew she would. When Pandora lifted the lid, the world changed forever. Disease, war, famine, madness, grief. They poured into the world like smoke, infecting every corner of human existence. Unlike the flood, these evils did not arrive all at once. They lingered, multiplied, evolved. And when Pandora closed the container in terror, one thing remained inside: hope. This detail has haunted philosophers for centuries. Why did Zeus allow hope to survive? Some ancient thinkers believed hope was not a gift, but the final cruelty, because hope convinces humanity to endure suffering rather than resist it. Pandora ensured that Zeus would never again need to destroy the world entirely. Humanity would now destroy itself, slowly, endlessly, under the illusion that things might someday improve. This was not extinction. This was eternal consequence. 10. Lightning as judgment, the omnipresent threat. Unlike floods or divine creations, Zeus' most persistent world-scale punishment required no grand event. It required only thunder. Lightning was not merely a weapon. It was Zeus' signature, a symbol of constant surveillance and instant judgment. It struck without warning, without trial, without explanation. Temples shattered. Fields burned. Kings were reduced to ash in moments. To ancient Greeks, lightning was proof that Zeus was never absent. Some believed Zeus deliberately struck the innocent at times, not out of cruelty, but to remind humanity that safety itself was an illusion granted by divine tolerance. Lightning taught humanity fear on a daily basis. Every storm became a reminder that existence persisted only because Zeus allowed it. Unlike the flood, lightning did not end. Unlike Pandora's evils, it did not hide. It was visible, audible, immediate, a god's finger resting permanently on the trigger of reality. The psychology of collective punishment. World-scale punishments differ from individual ones in a crucial way. They remove agency. No mortal could plead innocence during the flood. No child could avoid the evils released by Pandora. No prayer could guarantee safety from lightning. These punishments taught humanity a terrifying truth. Guilt was collective. In Zeus' justice, allowing evil was as punishable as committing it. This transformed morality itself. Humans began policing one another, fearing that the sins of a few could doom everyone. Thus, Zeus ruled not only through fear of punishment, but through mutual suspicion. The silence after judgment. One of the most disturbing elements of Zeus' world-shattering punishments is what followed them. Silence. After the flood, the world did not celebrate survival. It mourned what was lost. After Pandora, humanity did not rage against the gods. It adapted to suffering. After lightning, people rebuilt beneath the same unstable sky. Some myths suggest Zeus preferred silence to worship, that obedience born of exhaustion was more reliable than faith born of love. In this silence, Zeus' authority became absolute. Was Zeus just or afraid? A question lingers beneath these myths. Was Zeus punishing humanity for its sins? Or was he afraid of what humanity might become? Fire led to civilization. Civilization led to independence. Independence threatened divine relevance. By flooding the world, Zeus reminded humanity of fragility. By releasing suffering, he limited progress. By wielding lightning, he maintained fear. Perhaps Zeus understood something deeply unsettling. A world without fear of the gods would no longer need them. Conclusion of Part 3. Part 3 reveals Zeus at his most terrifying, not as a tyrant of individuals, but as a god willing to gamble with existence itself. These world-scale punishments show that Zeus did not merely enforce order. He defined the boundaries of survival. It was a decision, and that decision rested in the hands of the god who ruled the sky, watching, waiting, and listening for the next reason to let thunder fall. Final conclusion, the shadow of the thunder god. In the end, Zeus is not remembered merely as the god of thunder, nor as a distant ruler seated upon Mount Olympus. He endures in myth as something far more unsettling, the embodiment of absolute power. Through flesh, through mind, and through the fate of the world itself, Zeus demonstrated that punishment was never just about justice. It was about control. His lightning did not simply strike enemies. It defined the limits of defiance. His judgments did not merely correct mistakes. They reshaped reality. Those who challenged him learned that death was often the kindest outcome. True punishment, in Zeus' design, meant continuation, endless pain, endless awareness, endless consequence. And when individuals were no longer enough, entire civilizations paid the price. Yet perhaps the most terrifying truth is this. Zeus did not rule through constant violence. He ruled through the memory of it. Every storm, every disaster, every unexplained loss became a reminder that survival itself was conditional. In Greek mythology, Zeus is not the god who ends the world. He is the god who allows it to continue. As long as humanity remembers who holds the sky, the storm, and their fate in his hands. And as long as thunder echoes above, his judgment is never truly over.
Zeus vs. Hades Part Wodiord Siari. Thunder on Olympus. When the king of the sky faces the lord of death. Two forms of power. One forbidden question. In Greek mythology, there is a question rarely spoken aloud, not because it is difficult, but because it is dangerous. Who is stronger, Zeus or Hades? Zeus, king of the gods, wielder of thunder, the one who overthrew the Titans, ruler of the sky and the divine order. Hades, the one who dwells in shadow, without a shining throne, without glorious temples, yet every living being ultimately belongs to him. One rules life in motion, the other rules eternal stillness. Zeus is worshipped through oaths, Hades is feared through instinct. And while Olympus has always believed Zeus to be the strongest, a quiet truth has existed since the universe was divided into three realms. Zeus has never ventured deep into the underworld. Not because of laws, not because of agreements, but because there are places where thunder is no longer the ultimate weapon. I, Zeus, the power of the victor. Zeus was not born the strongest god. He became the strongest because he won. One, the god who overthrew his father. Zeus is the only Olympian who defeated his own father. Kronos triumphed over the Titans, an older, more primal generation of gods, survived a 10-year war that shook the cosmos itself. Zeus's lightning is more than a weapon. It is a symbol of judgment. When Zeus strikes, he does not merely destroy, he passes sentence. 2. The power of visibility. Zeus rules from the sky. Everyone sees him. Every god hears the thunder. His power lies in presence, overwhelming force, psychological dominance. Olympus exists because Zeus allows it to exist, but this creates a deadly paradox. Zeus's power depends on others recognizing him as king, and that is something Hades has never needed. Second, Hades, the power of the one who never needed to win. Hades never fought for the throne, not because he was weak, but because he chose the only domain that could never be taken from him. 1. Hades does not rule death, he owns it. A common misconception. Hades is not the god of death. He is the owner of death. Thanatos carries souls away, but Hades decides where those souls remain, or whether they are imprisoned forever. No being, not even Zeus, can escape that fate. 2. Power that requires no display. Hades does not need worshippers, temples. Prayers, he has time. Every battle Zeus wins, every empire that collapses, every god that fades into obscurity, only makes Hades's realm larger. Zeus rules while the world lives. Hades rules when everything ends. 3. The first moment of Zeus's doubt. Olympus had never questioned Zeus's power, until the day souls refused to move on. Spirits wandered. Death was delayed. The balance of the universe fractured. And Zeus realized something terrifying. Something was happening in Hades's domain that he could not control. Hera warned him. Athena analyzed it. Apollo remained silent. But Zeus, with the instinct of a ruler, did the only thing he knew. He decided to cross the boundary of the underworld himself. 4. When thunder meets shadow. For the first time in history, the sky did not answer Zeus. Lightning weakened as he descended. Light was swallowed whole. Thunder fell silent. There was no battlefield, no armies, only the stillness of death. And at its center, Hades was waiting. No anger, no challenge, just a single sentence, colder than fear itself. Do you bring thunder into a realm where nothing living remains to fear it, Zeus? V. The confrontation. Never recorded. Zeus hurled lightning. The ground split apart. But the underworld was unharmed. Hades did not strike back. He merely gestured. And Zeus saw heroes, he once blessed kings, who swore loyalty to Olympus mortals, who died for ideals Zeus himself had granted all of them, standing behind Hades's throne. Every choice you make, Hades said, ends here. For the first time, Zeus understood. His power creates death. Hades's power possesses it. Ending of Part 1. The Fear. Zeus never admits Zeus withdrew, not defeated, but not victorious. Olympus still stood. Yet from that moment on, Zeus never again looked upon the underworld as a lesser realm. And the ancient Greeks acknowledged this truth without ever saying it aloud. They swore by Zeus's name, but they never spoke Hades's name lightly. Part 2. The Underworld Awakens. When death stops waiting. Opening. The war that does not begin with thunder. Wars usually begin with fire, with lightning, with screams. This one did not. It began with silence. After Zeus returned from the underworld, Olympus pretended nothing had happened. The gods resumed their feasts. Mortals continued their prayers. But something fundamental had shifted. Zeus no longer threw lightning casually. The sky hesitated before answering him. And for the first time since the Titan War, Olympus was afraid of something it could not see. Because the most dangerous truth was no longer hidden, Hades had not fought back. And that meant he was choosing the timing. When death stops, obeying it started subtly, not with gods, not with kings, but with ordinary deaths. Men fell in battle and did not arrive in the underworld. Victims of plagues lingered between breath and silence. Souls hovered at the edge of existence, unable to cross. Thanatos himself became restless. He still harvested souls, but the gates did not open. For the first time since the dawn of time, the underworld was not receiving what was promised. And Olympus realized the unthinkable. Hades was withholding death. Chart the panic of the gods. Athena was the first to understand the implication. Death was not merely an ending. It was a mechanism. Without death, war lost its meaning, sacrifice lost its weight, immortality became meaningless. Ares raged. "Let me march into the underworld," he demanded. "Let steel answer shadow." Athena stopped him with a single sentence. "You cannot kill what governs death." Apollo fell silent when his prophecies stopped resolving. The future no longer moved forward. It looped. Even Hera began to fear something she had never feared before. A king who no longer controlled consequences. Third, Zeus's first mistake. Zeus did what kings always do when power slips. He asserted it. He summoned the Moirai, the fates themselves. Clotho, Lachesis, Atropos. "Why has death slowed?" Zeus demanded. "Why does the world hesitate to end?" The fates did not bow. They did not answer directly. Atropos, she who cuts the thread, said only this: "Because the one who keeps the ledger has closed the book." Zeus understood immediately. This was not rebellion. This was accounting. Hades was reminding Olympus of something it had chosen to forget. Every god's power has a cost, and every cost is paid in death. 4. The underworld moves. Then it happened. The rivers of the underworld surged. Styx overflowed its banks. Lethe leaked forgetfulness into the dreams of gods. Souls pressed against the borders of reality. But still, Hades did not march. He did not invade. He expanded. The dead did not rise to attack Olympus. They whispered. They whispered to oracles, to madmen, to kings on their thrones at night. They whispered a single truth. The gods are not eternal. They are merely late. The realm Zeus cannot strike. Zeus gathered the gods. "Enough," he declared. "If Hades withholds death, I will take his realm from him." Lightning split the heavens as Olympus descended toward the chasm. And once again, Zeus made the same mistake. He believed power travels everywhere. The underworld did not resist. It absorbed. Lightning struck and vanished. Thunder roared and died, because the underworld was not a place. It was a state of being. You cannot conquer death. You can only arrive in it. And that was when Hades finally spoke to Zeus again. Not in anger, not in challenge, but in correction. You rule because they fear losing what they have, Hades said. I rule because everything they have eventually becomes mine. 6. The most dangerous realization. Zeus raised his thunderbolt, and for the first time he hesitated. Because he understood what striking Hades would mean. If Hades fell, who would receive the dead? If death lost its master, what would existence become? Endless suffering, endless decay, immortality as a curse. Hades was not Olympus's enemy. He was its foundation. And foundations do not threaten towers. They simply outlast them. Ending of Part 2. The balance breaks. Zeus withdrew again. This time, not in defiance, but in calculation. Olympus still stood. The underworld still waited. But something irreversible had happened. Zeus had realized he could not destroy Hades without destroying the universe that made Zeus king. And Hades had proven something even more terrifying. He did not need to win. He only needed to stop cooperating. Part 3. Judgment of the Immortals. When even gods are measured by death. Opening. The question no god dares to ask immortality was never meant to be tested. The gods were created to rule, not to end. And yet, after the underworld awakened, a forbidden question spread across Olympus. Silently, instinctively. What happens if a god dies? Not can a god die, but what would follow if it happened? Zeus heard the question in the pauses between thunder. Hades heard it in the patience of the dead, and both understood. This was no longer about power. It was about authority over the end of all things. Zeus's final assertion. Zeus stood before Olympus and did what kings always do at the edge of decline. He declared order. No god stands above me, Zeus proclaimed. I defeated the Titans. I hold the sky. I shape fate through law. And for once, no one cheered, because victory over the past did not answer the future. Athena stepped forward. Father, she said carefully, strength is not the same as inevitability. Zeus ignored her. He gathered every symbol of his authority. The thunderbolt, the aegis, the oaths sworn in his name since the dawn of mankind, and he descended once more, not to threaten, but to judge Hades. Sehun, the trial without a court. There was no battlefield. There was no army. Only a vast, empty plain within the underworld, older than Olympus itself. Hades stood alone, not armed, not armored, waiting. You claim dominion, Zeus said. You claim inevitability, but you have never faced me. Hades nodded. Because inevitability does not challenge force, he replied. It waits for it to exhaust itself. Zeus struck, this time with everything. Lightning did not shatter the underworld. It illuminated it. Every soul, every regret, every consequence of divine command. And for the first time, Zeus saw the full ledger. Every war blessed in his name. Every king empowered by his favor. Every life shortened by his thunder. The underworld was not rebellion. It was record-keeping. 3. The verdict Zeus cannot escape. Enough, Zeus demanded. What is it you want? Hades did not answer immediately, because desire was not his nature. I want nothing, Hades said at last. I already have everything. Zeus raised the thunderbolt again, but this time Hades spoke the words no god had ever spoken to Zeus. Strike me. and tell me where your dead will go." The thunderbolt lowered, not in defeat, in understanding. Killing Hades would not prove dominance. It would erase death itself and condemn existence to endless decay. Zeus could destroy his brother, but he could not replace him. 4. The moment of truth. Zeus finally asked the question he had avoided since the Titan War. "Am I subject to you?" Hades did not smile. He did not gloat. He answered with absolute calm, "You are subject to consequence." Silence followed. Not fear, acceptance. Zeus ruled life's order. Hades ruled its conclusion. And conclusions do not answer to beginnings. V. The final balance. The Moirai appeared, uninvited. Clotho spun. Lachesis measured. Atropos held the shears. Even Zeus did not command them. Atropos looked at both brothers and spoke. Power commands events. Death commands certainty. The judgment was not dramatic. It was final. Ending. Who is stronger? Zeus returned to Olympus, still king, still feared, still powerful, but no longer absolute. Hades returned to the underworld, still unseen, still unpraised, still inevitable. And so the verdict stands. Zeus is the strongest among the living gods. But Hades is stronger than strength itself. Because thunder can be resisted, kings can fall, empires can end, but death never needs to fight. It only waits.
Early cracks in Olympus. Contrary to popular myth, Olympus was never unanimously loyal. Poseidon resented distance. Hades resented exile. Hera resented humiliation. Even Apollo, radiant and beloved, occasionally bristled under Zeus's unpredictability. Yet, resentment alone was never enough to spark rebellion. Zeus understood that dissatisfaction could be tolerated, coordination could not. Thus, Olympus was engineered to prevent unity. Gods were given domains that isolated them. Rivalries were subtly encouraged. Personal conflicts were allowed to fester, ensuring that grievances remained individual rather than collective. A divided pantheon is a controllable pantheon. On the rare occasions when dissent aligned, such as the aborted rebellion involving Hera, Athena, and Poseidon, Zeus responded not with compromise, but with overwhelming force and public humiliation. The rebellion failed not because it lacked merit, but because it lacked time. Afterward, no god ever spoke of overthrow again. Law without appeal. Zeus was not bound by law. He was the law. There existed no divine court, no mechanism for appeal, no principle higher than his will. This absence was not accidental. It ensured that justice flowed in only one direction. When Zeus punished mortals unjustly, no one could object. When Zeus violated oaths, no one could accuse. When Zeus contradicted himself, myth adjusted accordingly. The gods learned to interpret his inconsistency as mystery, his cruelty as necessity, his fear as wisdom. This was not ignorance, it was survival. The silent transformation of fear. Over centuries, fear ceased to feel like oppression. It became tradition. Mortals prayed not out of love, but precaution. Gods praised Zeus not out of reverence, but reflex. The memory of the Titans faded into abstraction, their names reduced to cautionary tales. Zeus no longer needed to justify his authority. His rule felt inevitable, and inevitability is the final stage of domination. By the time Olympus stood unchallenged, the most dangerous truth had already been buried. Zeus did not rule because he was chosen. He ruled because no alternative was allowed to exist. The unspoken realization. Among the gods, a realization slowly emerged, never spoken, never recorded. If Zeus could overthrow his father, if Zeus could imprison the Titans, if Zeus could devour prophecy itself, then Zeus could be overthrown as well. And that possibility terrified him more than lightning ever terrified mortals. Thus, every decision, every punishment, every myth served a single purpose: to ensure that history would never repeat itself, except in Zeus's favor. Section 3/3. The greatest contradiction and the birth of divine silence. The paradox at the heart of Zeus. Zeus ruled in the name of order. yet his reign was born of rebellion. He condemned chaos, yet emerged from the most violent upheaval the cosmos had ever known. He punished dissent, yet owed his throne to defiance. This was the paradox Zeus could never resolve, and thus never allow to be spoken. Every law he proclaimed, every oath he enforced, carried an unspoken exemption: himself. Zeus demanded obedience, not because obedience was sacred, but because disobedience reminded him of his own origin. To tolerate rebellion in others was to legitimize the act that had placed him on the throne, and that was intolerable. Thus, Zeus transformed rebellion from a political act into a moral crime. Not wrong because it failed. Wrong because it existed. From king to principal, the most dangerous transformation Zeus achieved was not military or divine, it was conceptual. He ceased to be merely a ruler. He became a principle of reality. Thunder no longer meant Zeus was angry, it meant the universe was correcting itself. Storms were not punishment, they were balance. When mortals suffered, it was framed as necessity. When gods obeyed, it was called harmony. By embedding his will into natural phenomena, Zeus made opposition feel unnatural. To oppose Zeus was not to challenge a king. It was to challenge the cosmos itself. This was his most insidious triumph. The final lesson of the Titans. The Titans were not only defeated, they were reframed. In early myths, they were remembered as creators, architects of time, memory, and natural law. Over generations, those qualities were stripped away. They became symbols of savagery, excess, and blind force. Their complexity vanished. This was not erosion, it was revision. Zeus ensured that the story of the Titans would serve as a warning rather than a precedent. Any mention of their former wisdom was suppressed. Any memory of their restraint was discarded. Only their defeat remained. The lesson taught to gods and mortals alike was simple. Power that challenges Zeus is evil by definition. Thus, history itself became a weapon. The gods learned to forget. Memory is dangerous. Zeus knew this. He allowed myths to multiply, but ensured they contradicted one another. He encouraged poetry, but not accuracy. Over time, truth dissolved into symbolism. When stories conflict, certainty disappears, and with it, the capacity to judge. Olympus did not forget because it was ignorant. It forgot because forgetting was safer. Gods learned to laugh at old myths, to treat them as metaphors rather than records. The past became entertainment. The future became unthinkable. Zeus did not need to censor. Confusion did the work for him. Justice without compassion. A ruler who believes himself to be order incarnate no longer requires empathy. Zeus's judgments were absolute, but never intimate. He punished broadly, without listening, without context. Mortals were struck down as examples. Cities were destroyed as warnings. Innocence was collateral, not concern. Compassion complicates power. Zeus avoided it. Mercy creates precedent. Zeus allowed none. This is why forgiveness is absent from his mythology. There is punishment, transformation, exile, but rarely absolution. To forgive would be to admit excess. To admit excess would be to accept limitation. And limitation was the one thing Zeus could not endure. The silence of Olympus is complete. By the height of Zeus's reign, Olympus no longer debated morality. Discussions centered on interpretation, not truth. Gods asked how Zeus's will should be enacted, never whether it should be. Even dissenters framed their objections carefully, disguising resistance as concern. Silence was no longer enforced. It was internalized. The gods had learned the final rule of Zeus's order. Survival requires acceptance. Acceptance requires silence. The unanswered question. There remained one question never asked, never written, never sung. If Zeus truly embodied justice, why did his rule require so much fear? Justice that must be enforced by terror is not justice, it is stability at any cost. And Zeus chose stability over truth every time. The first seal is set. With the Titans buried, prophecy consumed, wisdom controlled, and memory fragmented, Zeus achieved what no ruler before him had accomplished. He eliminated not just his enemies, but the conditions under which enemies could arise. By the end of Part 1, Olympus stands unified, not by loyalty, not by love, but by resignation. The gods do not challenge Zeus because they believe in him. They do not challenge him because they no longer believe in challenge itself. This is the true foundation of Olympian order. Closing of Part I. Zeus did not ascend because he was the most righteous. He endured because he was the most prepared to rewrite history, prepared to weaponize fear, prepared to sacrifice truth for permanence. Thus ends the first and deepest revelation. Zeus did not create justice. He replaced it with himself.